A BETU full day sa'yo, kagamat, mathematiisin yan, and soulmate. I am Tutor Prince at your service. Dito sa ETULAY TV Mathematics 6, we believe in the Chinese proverb that states that a teacher opens the door and the student enters by himself or herself. Kaya ano pang hihintay mo? Tara, allow me to guide you in learning the different concepts and skills in Mathematics 6. So for today, for this episode, ang ating pag-aaralan ay ang topic for Quarter 2, Week 2 ng Math 6, which is on solving problems involving different types of proportion. So sa ngalan ng ating Math Bay Tutor Andre, ako si Tutor Prince, ang inyong soulmate. At nais po natin pasalamatan ang Central Office sa pagpapagamit po nila ng module na ito, kung saan narito po ang kanilang development team: author, editors, reviewers, illustrator, layout artist, and management team. Objectives natin for this session, tatlo. Una, find a missing term in a proportion, direct, inverse, and partitive. Pangalawa, use models, tables, and illustrations to understand, identify, and differentiate direct, inverse, and partitive proportions. At ang pangatlo, solve problems involving direct proportion, partitive proportion, and inverse proportion. Kaya let's start. Pero bago ang lahat, baka lang nakalimutan na. So hashtag, mag-review muna tayo. Tell whether each pair of ratios form a proportion. So do you still remember how to check whether two ratios form a proportion? Madali lang yan. I-check natin kung ang product ng means ay equal sa product ng extremes. Sa proportion natin sa item number 1, 5 and 4 are the means, 2 and 10 are the extremes. 5 times 4 ay 20, 2 times 10 ay 20. Parehas ang product, therefore, these two ratios form a proportion. Pangalawa, the means are 4 and 6 at ang product ng 4 and 6 ay 24. At ang extremes naman natin ay 8 and 3 at ang product nila ay 24 din. So, the means and the extremes have the same product. Therefore, the two ratios here form a proportion. Panghuli na, 6 and 4 ang means, ang product ng dalawang yan ay 24, while 5 and 5 naman ang ating extremes. At ang product naman dalawang yan ay 25. Hindi pareho ang nakuha nating product. Ibig lang sabihin, this equation is false. The two ratios do not form a proportion. So I hope natatandaan mo yan. Next, so hashtag extra rice na this. Bakit kaya? Basahin natin ang problem. Mother plans to cook mixed seafoods for our lunch. She will mix 2 pieces of shells for every 3 pieces of small squids. How many shells will she need to mix with 12 pieces of squids? I-highlight natin ang binigay na information. 2 pieces of shells for every 3 pieces of small squids. At ang tanong ulit, how many shells will she need to mix with 12 pieces of squids? So for this situation, we can have a table to represent or organize the data. So kung dalawa ang number of shells or kung dalawa ang shells na ihahalo, meron 3 squids na ilalagay si nanay. Kung 4 naman ang shells, 6 na squid naman ang ilalagay ni nanay. Kung 6 ang shells, 9 naman ang squids. At ang tanong, ilan dapat ang shells kung 12 ang squids na ilalagay ni nanay? So let us say that this question mark here is the letter N or the variable N. It will represent the number of shells mother will mix with 12 pieces of squids. So mapapansin natin, as the number of shells increases, the number of squids also increases at the same rate. Pero kapag pababa yung isa, pababa din naman yung isa pa. Kaya ang tawag dyan ay application ng direct proportion. At mapapansin din natin na yung ating mga ratio, okay, na maisusulat natin ay equal lahat sa 2 to 3. Ang 4 to 6 ay equal sa 2 to 3. 6 to 9 ay equal sa 2 to 3. At syempre, it will follow that yung ratio na blank or yung ng n to 12, so this will be letter n, to 12 ay dapat equal din sa 2 to 3. So all the ratios here can be simplified as 2 to 3. Now, how do we determine the value of the missing term? So again, letter N ang question mark na yan. So we can apply here cross-product property. So how do we do that? So let me rewrite the proportion. N to 12 equals 2 to 3. So mag-cross multiply tayo. N times 3 must be equal to 2 times 12. Ibig lang sabihin, N times 3 ay equal sa 24 at dapat ang N ay maging equal sa 24 divided by 3. Bakit? Sa isang multiplication number sentence, pag ang missing ay factor, we get its value by dividing the product by the given factor. So we have N equals 24 over 3. And the answer is 8. So ang value ng N ay 8. Ibig sabihin, kailangan merong 8 na shells doon dahil maglalagay si nanay ng 12 squids. So that is already solved. Sunod, let us find the missing term in this direct proportion. Blank laptops to 5 desktops equals 6 laptops to 15 desktops. I-rewrite natin yan in column form naman. So let us say again, let us represent this unknown using the letter N. So we have N to 5 in column form equals 6 to 15. So from this proportion, we can set up an equation by showing that the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. So we have 5 times 6 equals N times 15. Ibig sabihin, 30 equals N times 15. And it follows that N must be equal to 30 over 15 is equal to 2. So you have 2 laptops to 5 desktops equals 6 laptops to 15 desktops. So that's already solved. Sunod, hashtag solve pa more. So mag-solve pa tayo ng word problem involving direct proportion. Here is the problem. Brando planted 15 seedlings in 2 hours. At this rate, how many seedlings can he plant in 6 hours? So ano yung mga ratios na involved dito? So we have yung 15 seedlings to 2 hours or can just be written as 15 is to 2. This must be equal sa ratio na blank number of seedlings to 6 hours. So let us say this unknown quantity ay N ulit. Okay? So you have the proportion now in which we have 2 ratios written in column form. So what could be our equation? We have 2 times N representing the product of the means. And this should be equal to 6 times 15 that represents naman the product of the extremes. So you have 2 times N equals 90. And therefore, N is equal to 90 over 2. And therefore, N is equal to 45. So Brando can plant 45 seedlings in 6 hours. Sunod, hashtag save more when you spend less. Aba, save more, tapos spend less. More and then less. Basahin natin ang sample problem. Dennis' weekly allowance lasts for 5 days when she spends 24 pesos daily. This week, she plans to make her allowance last for 6 days. How much should she spend per day then? Tingnan natin ang table that can model this situation. So we have 2 categories of quantities. Una, yung amount of money spent per day. We have 24 and then yung question mark. Bali, yan yung ating variable N or letter N. At yung pangalawang category ng quantities, number of days the allowance will last. So we have 5 and then 6. Now, how can we solve this? Using a proportion. Do we write that 24 to 5 ay equal sa N to 6? Parang hindi, no? Kasi dapat, when the amount of money Denny spends a day decreases, the number of days that her weekly allowance will last increases. So, hindi ito yung kagaya nung kanina na kapag yung isa ay lumalaki, yung isa ay lumalaki din. This time, baliktad. Yung isa lalaki, yung isa ay liliit. One will increase, the other will decrease. So, kung lumaki yung value, yung number of days the allowance will last. Okay? Lumaki yung value dyan. Dapat, ang maging corresponding change dyan sa amount of money spent per day ay dapat liliit yan. Okay? So this is an application of inverse proportion. Now, how do we set up a proportion para ma-solve natin yung unknown sa problem na ito? Pang tip, we have to switch the terms in one quantity to make the ratios equivalent. So, meron tayong dalawang options. Either, pagpalitin natin yung 24 at saka itong n na to, o kaya naman itong 5 at saka 6. Pero never yung 24 at saka 5 at saka yung n at 6. Hindi pwede yung hindi magkaparehas na quantities ang iyong ipagpapalit ng pwesto. So this time, let's say, ang ipagpapalit natin ng pwesto ay yung sa number of days the allowance will last. So 5 and 6, switch natin. Ayan. So therefore, we can now have the proportion 24 to 6 equals, okay, yan ay n nga, yung question mark, n to 5. So how do we solve for n this time? So we have 24. Ano nga iyon? 24 to 6 equals n to 5. So dahil ito na yung ating proportion, we can already apply cross-product property kagaya ng ating ginawa kanina sa direct proportion. So we have 24 times 5 equals 6 times n. So 24 times 5 equals 6 times n. Okay? So again, nag-switch tayo ng place ng 5 at saka ng 6. Okay? So ang product ng 24 and 5 ay 120. So you have 120 pesos equals 6 times n. At ang n nga dapat ay maging equal sa quotient when you divide 120 by 6. And you should get that n is equal to 20 pesos. Ibig sabihin, kada araw, dapat ay pesos para tumagal yung allowance niya ng 6 days. Nakukuha pa yan, ha? Next one, solve for more tayo ulit. So another problem involving inverse proportion. So food packs to be distributed among 40 families in a barangay will last for 5 days. If 10 families move in and will be added to the list of recipients, how many days will the food supply last? So ito ang table natin that will model that will illustrate the situation. So we have two quantities, number of families and number of days. So kung 40 ang bilang ng families, magtatagal yung supply or food supply ng 5 days. Pero kung 50 na, kasi ibig sabihin, idinagdag na yung 10 na nag-move in sa barangay dun sa 40. Okay? Gaano na lang, okay, ilang araw na lang itatagal nung food supply. So this is again, inverse proportion. Kasi kung dumami yung families, dapat i-ikli naman yung buhay ng food supplies. So, nag-increase dito, therefore dito, magdi-decrease. So, para ma-set up natin yung proportion, mag-switch ulit tayo. So, let's say, ang isi-switch natin this time ay yung merong question mark or yung ating i-represent using letter N. Ayan. So, dito mapupunta si N. Ay, hindi. Parang baliktad yun. Okay. Hindi dapat gano'n ang ating pag-move. Kasi dapat same category of quantities. Okay? Akin lamang yan i-delete. Yan. So, ang same categories kasi ay yung number of days. So, dito pala tayo dapat gagalaw. So, yung 5 ay mapupunta dito sa baba at aakit naman yung N. Ayan. So, again, 5 and N dapat ang magpalit ng pwesto kasi sila yung same, under the same category. So, we now have the ratio or the proportion rather, 40 is to n equals 50 is to 5. Ayan. So this is already our equation or proportion. Apply ulit tayo ng cross-product property. So 40 times 5, pwede nang i-mental math yan. Ano yung sagot doon? Sa 40 times 5, 200. Equals, ano ang n times 50? Isulat natin as is. So n times 50. So ang n dapat niyan ay maging equal sa 200 divided by 50. So 250 are both divisible by 10. So to divide by 10, we can simply cancel 1 0 in each number. So you have n equals 20 over 5. Ano ang 20 divided by 5? Ang sagot dyan ay 4. Ibig sabihin, tatagal lang ng 4 days ang food supplies dahil nga nadagdagan ng 10 families ang pagbibigyan ng food packs. Okay? Malinaw yan ha? Sunod, ayan, i-shake na yan. Dahil meron tayong mga prutas dito, pwede tayong mag-fruit shake. So anong prutas na involved? Pomelos and mangoes. So Marcelo harvested 80 pomelos and mangoes in their backyard. the ratio of the number of pomelos to the number of mangoes is 2:3. How many pomelos and how many mangoes did he harvest? Ayan. So in this particular situation, the whole needs to be divided proportionally into parts based on the given ratio. So itong ratio na 2:3, okay, pwede yung basahin as 2 units is to 3 units. So those are the actual representation of the number of pomelos and mangoes. And this is about partitive proportion. So how do we solve a problem involving partitive proportion? So again, ang 2 to 3 ay ibig sabihin yan, 2 units is to 3 units. Okay? 2 units meaning 2 times, okay, 1 unit is to 3 times 1 unit. Ibig sabihin ng 1 unit, yan ang nagre-represent ilang prutas sa kada unit. Okay? Kaya manggaman yan o pomelo. So we can represent this unknown as n. Okay? So you have 2 times n is to 3 times n. So ibig sabihin, itong 2 times n na ito, yan ang nagre-represent sa actual number ng pomelos na na-harvest ni Marcelo. Whereas yung 3 times n naman, ang nagre-represent sa actual number ng mangoes na na-harvest ni Marcelo. Now, ang total ay 80. So, ibig sabihin yan, ang 2 times n plus 3 times n ay 80. Ayan. So, dalawang n plus tatlong n. So, ipag-add mo lang yung 2 and 3, you'll get 5. At yun ang imumultiply sa n. And you should get 80. Okay, again, n represents here the value equivalent to 1 unit. And n must be equal to 80 divided by 5, which means it is equal to 16. Ibig sabihin, kada unit, ang ibig sabihin nun ay 16 fruits. So kung 2 units ito, ibig sabihin lang yan, meron siyang na-harvest na 32 pomelos. At kung 3 units ito, at kada unit ay 16 nga, 3 times 16 ay 48. Ito na ang sagot, 32 pomelos and 48 mangoes. Ngayon, para mas mabilis tayo mag-solve, ito lang ang simpleng gagawin natin. So, yung binigay na sum, yan ay i-divide lang sa sum ng numbers sa ratio. 2 plus 3 ay 5. So, 80 over 5 ay 16. At ang sunod na gagawin ay i-multiply yung 16 na yan, okay, by each number in the ratio. So, 16 times 2 ay 32. 16 times 3 ay 48. So, yun na ang sagot. Let's have a different situation wherein ang bibigay naman ay difference. So, the ratio of two numbers is 8 to 5. If their difference is 120, what are the numbers? So, again, itong 8 to 5 na to, by the way, this is in column form. Ibig lang sabihin yan, pwede yung isulat as the fraction form 8 to 5. At yan ang simplest form ng ating ratio. Ibig sabihin ng simplest form na divide ang actual number both by the same number. Okay? By a common number, a common factor, or their GCF to be specific. So let's say, n yung kanilang common factor. I mean, I'm referring to the actual numbers that are involved here. So let's say, 8 times n, okay, yung nire-represent ng 8 sa ratio na yan, at yung 5 times n naman, ang nire-represent ng 5 sa ratio na 8 is to 5. So, ibig sabihin, ang n na yan, ang common or GCF, greatest common factor ng dalawang numbers na involved sa problem na yan. And that n is also equal to the value of 1 unit in this partitive proportion. Okay? So, ang involved dito ay difference. Ibig sabihin, pag minus natin, yung dalawang numbers, ang sagot ay 120. So, ibig sabihin, 8 times n minus 5 times n, ang magiging sagot ay 120. Kung kanina, nag-add tayo na may n, this time magma-minus naman tayo. So, madali lang yun. Copy natin yung times n, and then i-minus natin yung 8 sa 5. So, we get 3. So, we have 3 times n equals 120, which means n ay equals sa 120 over 3, which means n ay 40. So, ano yung mga actual numbers na yan? So, we go back to our representation. 8 times n. So, 8 times 40, 320. 5 times 40, 200. 320 minus 200 ay 120 naman nga. So, ibig sabihin, tama ang ating naging sagot na ang n ay 40, and therefore, the two numbers are 320 and 200. Okay? So now that we have finished solving this problem, we are ready for the DIP quiz. So DIP stands for direct, inverse, partitive, and P for proportion. Okay. So we have the first problem. 2 water pumps can fill a water tank in 20 minutes. How many minutes will it take 4 pumps to fill the tank at the same rate? So we have two quantities involved, or two types of quantities involved. Number of pumps at number of minutes. So, kung 2 water pumps ang nakabukas, mapifill nila yung tank in 20 minutes. Kung 4 naman, gano'n kaya katagal nilang mapupuno yung the same tank? So, this will be our N. Ayan. So, kung dumami yung bilang ng tank, ibig lang sabihin, dapat umikli na lang yung oras na kakainin ng pagpupuno ng tank na yon. So, ibig sabihin, this is inverse proportion. Ibig lang sabihin yan, to set up the proportion, we have to switch the terms, okay, which are under the same category. So let's say, ang isa-switch natin ay yung may n ulit, or may unknown value. So yung n ay aakyat. It will be paired with 2 to form the ratio 2 to n. Whereas yung 20 ay bababa, okay, to be paired up with 4. So you have the ratio 4 is to 20. So you have the proportion 2 is to n equals 4 is to 20, from which we can set up the equation showing that the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. So we have n times 4 is equal to 2 times 20, which is just 40. So dividing 40 by 4, we will get the value of n, which is 10. Ayan. So, nakalahati yung oras. Naging 10 minutes na lang dahil nga dumoble naman yung bilang ng pump. So the answer is 10 minutes. Let's have the next one. In a barangay, the ratio of the government employees to private employees is 3 is to 7. If in a certain barangay, there are 15 government employees, how many private employees are there? Ayan. So logically, kapag tumaas yung bilang ng government employees, tataas din naman ang bilang ng private employees. Ito ang magiging guide natin. 3 is to 7. For every 3, dapat mayroong limitaw na 7 private employees. Ayan. So this is direct proportion. So we have the ratios 3 is to 7 equals 15 is to n. So n here represents the number of private employees. Ayan. Siya yung unknown doon sa pangalawang ratio natin na 15 is to n. So yung unang term sa bawat ratio, yan ang bilang ng government employees. At yung pangalawa ay bilang ng private employees. Okay? So, to solve for the missing term here in this proportion, again, let's set up our equation. Products of the means and extremes are equal. So, 7 times 15, yan ay 105. At dapat maging equal yan sa 3 times n. And ang n ay dapat naman maging equal sa quotient when you divide 105 by 3. And this is exactly 35. So, ibig sabihin lang yan, dapat ay merong 35 private employees dahil nga merong 15 government employees. And they will follow the ratio 3 is to 7. Huling problem na. The product of two numbers is 192. Ayan, product naman ang binigay. If the ratio of the two numbers is 4 is to 3 or 4 units to 3 units, what are the two numbers? Ayan. So again, using this ratio as our guide, we will represent the two numbers involved in this problem. So, ibig sabihin ng 4 units na yan ay 4 times n, where n represents the value of 1 unit in this ratio. Whereas 3, okay, shall lead us to the expression 3 times n, where n nga, okay, is the same variable we used earlier to represent the value of 1 unit. So, this 4 times n and 3 times n represent the two numbers whose product, as mentioned in the problem, ay 192. So let us write an equation for that. 4 times n times 3 times n, ang product ay 192. Ngayon, i-multiply natin, or we can rearrange the terms in a multiplication expression. Dahil, commutative naman, or ano ba, associative din. It will not affect the result. So let's say we have 4 times 3 times n times n. So pinagtabi natin yung dalawang constants at yung dalawang n. Okay? What is 4 times 3? Yan ay 12. Ibig sabihin, 12 times n equals 192. Now let's say this part of the expression, which is n times n, represents one factor in this expression on the left side. So how do we solve for the value of this missing factor? Given that the 12 is one of the factors and 192 is the product. Kagaya din kanina, we just have to divide the given product by the given factor. So we have n times n equals 192 times 12, which means that n times n ay equals sa 16. Now we have to think of a number n such that when you multiply it by itself, you will get 16. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 ay 2, 3 times 3 ay 9, pero 4 times 4, yan ay 16. Ibig sabihin, ang hinahanap nating value ng n ay 4. And now that we know what n is, we can go back now to the expression 4 times n and 3 times n to solve or to determine the actual numbers involved in this problem. So we have 4 times 4, which is the value of n. Therefore, this is 16. And then 3 times n, which is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Ibig sabihin, the two numbers are 16 and 12. So 16 times 12 ay 192. And 16 over 12, when simplified, will give us 4 to 3. Kasi they are both divisible by 4. Ayan. So that is already solved. So that ends our session for today. Kagamat, mathematician yan, and solvemate. Pero bago ang lahat, I'd like to remind you that we are visible in social media. Please follow us or like the Facebook page of DepEd EdTech Unit and DepEd Tayo, and subscribe to the YouTube channel of DepEd Philippines, DepEd EdTech Unit, and DepEd TV. And also join the growing family of DepEd ETULAY Facebook group. Ayan, so as of kahapon o kagabi, meron ng 60.7 thousand na members dyan sa Facebook group na yan. Okay? So we hope to see you in this Facebook group. At bago ko kayo iwanan, or bago tayo maghiwa-hiwalay virtually, ito ang nais kong iwan sa iyo. Sinasabi nila na math ay mental abuse to humans. Pero, math means mistakes allow thinking to happen. M-A-T-H, mistakes allow thinking to happen. At isa pa, you do not hate what you do not know. Yung mga topic na mahihirap, treat those as opportunities to be even more teachable. So that will be all. Once again, I am your Tutor Prince at your service. Bye!